Welcome to Why I Quit, a show that covers real people quitting their 9-to-5 jobs in search of something different. Listen to inspiring conversations where we dive deep into the stories of why people quit their jobs, what were the hardest parts, where are they now, and any advice for people following the same path. I am so excited to introduce Robert Bentley as this week's guest on Why I Quit. Listen as Robert discusses his journey of starting a mobile app development business in the early days of iOS 4. Learn how he waited tables to pay the bills while trying to build the business. Get inspired hearing how he scaled the Jed Mahonis Group over the past 10 years, helping founders and businesses bring their ideas to life. Hey, Rob, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, good to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear about your story. Could you start off just telling me a little bit about where you're from and a little bit of your education background and how that led into your first job?
Yeah, I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've lived here since I was 10. I lived in Indiana before that. And I was going to school initially to become a pastor. But then I just felt like that career choice wasn't right for me. So I switched my major to business, and to pay the bills during college, I was serving tables at the Perkins in Edina, Minnesota.
Nice. And tell me a little bit about, your mindset in college of, from that business major, what did you expect in terms of that to translate to your first time job? And what was kind of your goals at that point?
I think I had thought at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I thought with a business degree, I could probably find a job at some company and at least get a decent salary to start off with. It was just kind of more so not knowing what I wanted, but going down the path of what I felt like I should do at the time, which was go to school, get your degree, that whole thing. So that's what I was doing.
Now, perfect. And tell me a little bit about that first job that you had.
While I was still in school, I had talked to my business partner, Tim, and this was when the App Store was just really opening up to third-party developers right back in iOS 4. And I was just these apps, this is not going anywhere. We should just start a business making these, because he was into computer science and had been developing websites all his life. I was okay at using a computer just like any other kid my age, but I wasn't a whiz or anything like that. I was just I can do the business side of it. You can do the programming, and we can, go out and do it. And we just kind of decided that day, we're going to start a business.
Was this something that you had the entrepreneurial itch before? Was this something you had growing up, or was this just completely new and just a leap of faith that, you decided to go for one day?
Yeah, I'd never really had thought about it before that day. It was just it came to me while I was talking to him, and we just kind of decided to do it. So I wasn't really looking to start my own company or do that. I just kind of felt it in the moment and went forward with it.
Yeah, and I'm curious in terms of where your confidence level was at that point. You hadn't started a business before, you decided to kind of jump all in. Did you have the feeling you thought you were going to make it work no matter what, or you had no idea what was going to happen, or where was your confidence level at that moment?
Yeah, I just kind of figured I don't know, I've always been a little bit more confident. Maybe sometimes I shouldn't, but I just am. And so I was if we just keep working at it and we try every day to do better than we did the day before, it's going to work out somehow. And, that's not to say things were never tough, because they certainly were at quite a few points, but things actually have worked out because, I've heard the moment you fail is when you give up, and I haven't given up yet.
Something we talk about with almost every guest on the show is really that expectation versus reality of that first year. What was kind of your expectations going in to start the business, and what was that first year really like for you?
Well, we had, kind of dreamed big, and we were making all these plans, all right, well, within 3 years, we should have a good roster of clients. Within 5 years, we should be able to swim in a bathtub full of gold doubloons. We actually wrote that down on one of our like business goal, like yearly meetings. Like, this is our goal. Another one was to be able to like hire on retainer a sniper to roam around on the rooftops downtown just in case a deal went sour. But yeah, that's not exactly how it went in real life. We put up a website and set up our email addresses, and then we were just like, all right, we're open for business. And that's what it felt like. It was 9 months until we got one inquiry to do work on a mobile app, and it was we took it for not a whole lot of money. We did some bug fixes for an art app for $250. After that, we got someone that asked us to create a website, and then we had some portfolio pieces, and then our site, like my partner was really good at doing SEO stuff. So after a couple of years, we had ranked to like the top like 1, 2, or 3rd result in Google when you were doing software developers in Minneapolis or app developers. Then we started getting, a bit more business and things started taking off, but it definitely took a couple years before we were able to make enough money to live off of it.
Yeah, and talk to me a little bit about how you were able to kind of get through those, rough few years in the beginning. Was it the fact that you like believed in the business and you and your business partner that you could get through it to get to it? Did you have moments when you were like, I don't know if we're heading down the right path, or, what did that look like for you?
I guess I never really doubted that if we kept going, we would be successful. It was just figuring out how. At the time, I was still serving tables like 20 hours a week. I was doing like 1 or 2 dinner shifts and then working on the weekend during weekday mornings, and then working on the business Monday through Friday and hanging out when I wasn't doing any of that. So like, yeah, I don't know. I never really like had doubts about it. Like I wasn't doing the right thing. It just, it was a lot slower moving and a lot harder at first than I thought it would be initially.
Did you have a specific moment or, a specific deal where you were like, okay, we're onto something here. We have a stable business and it's like, it's going somewhere. Did you have like a specific moment like that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure if I should talk about the name of the app, but we got a messaging app in 2014, and it was enough money that I was able to be like, okay, well, we can at least pay ourselves regularly, like monthly. It's not just, we had a deal come in and we finished the project and now we're getting half the money and it's a nice bump in our checking account, right? Like this is like, hey, we need to pay ourselves regularly, and this deal gave us the ability to do that. And we landed that deal beginning of 2014. So it was like roughly 2 years after we had started the business.
I'd love to hear a little bit about, kind of those initial days. What was that like back then of like the early days of development? Like, how does it compare to now? Do you have any like, kind of like old stories of like telling what it was like back then?
I mean, developing itself was really different. I mean, I started doing iOS programming, and back then it was in Objective-C. Since then, Apple has switched to Swift, and now there's Swift UI out. But like even going back to Objective-C, like there was different stuff that I haven't thought about in years, like memory management, doing like release retain. I was doing all of that stuff while I was learning, and then they kind of slowly like made it better so you didn't have to worry about all of that stuff. Plus just the like landscape of it was different too. From a business perspective, it was still like a gold rush mentality, right? Like, okay, I'm going to put an app on the App Store and sell it for $1 and make $1 million. And then that is just not what it's like anymore. People are still trying to do stuff like that, but it's not the same kind of like hysteria of like, oh yeah, I built this simple game and sold it for $1 and made $10 million. Like you have to have a lot of marketing. There's so many apps out there, and it is just different now.
Yeah, and talk to me about that shift in the market. You've definitely seen a lot of things change from consumer-facing apps to now B2B apps. And, as this landscape market has changed, how has that changed your business? And, was that transition, difficult along the way? And what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a slow progression. Like, since there was this gold rush, we were really trying to like advertise to like startups in the startup community. And we still do apps with that because it's, some of them are still really viable. Like one we just built is called Turn Signal. And it's an app that connects users on demand with a lawyer in the event that they're pulled over by the police. So it kind of helps de-escalate everything. The interaction's recorded, and then there's like a live lawyer giving advice. So like apps like that, it's a startup, sure, but it's like helping make the world a better place. And I was super happy to be a part of that. But our overall marketing is now more towards businesses, either like internally making their processes easier, better, more efficient, stuff like that, or customer facing apps for those businesses.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, as you started growing the business and having more projects and, more stability in the business itself, where was your mindset in terms of, kind of like where you wanted the business to go? Were you just focused on getting as many clients as you could? Were you thinking about different things of like other projects as well, or more work-life balance, or, how did you think about it as you were growing the business over the years?
Well, I've always wanted to like take in as many projects as I possibly could. Like if it became more than we were able to handle, I would hire more people to handle it. Right. That was my mentality. Like if you can get the work in, and then, that's the hard part, right? Like getting it done is also hard, but it's not the hard part. You can figure it out. Oh, we need someone to do this development. Okay, find someone, do it. Gaining the clients though has been the question I've been trying to ask myself is how can I accelerate that? And, we're getting better at it, but it's still a challenge.
Yep. No, makes sense. And in terms of kind of one thing we talk about a lot on the show, especially with founders, is, really thinking about how they think about time in terms of like, work and life. And a lot of times, those blend together, especially when you're running the business, especially services business where, your time is the money. A lot of the times, like how do you look at work-life balance, or how do you look at, kind of like your time of like balancing between work and, other things that you're interested in as well?
Well, I used to be a lot worse about work-life balance than I am now. I've been running the business for 10 years now, but at first it was like this kind of like new toy I had. And I was like, ooh, yeah, maybe an email's come in, and I would check my phone way too often. And then as the business grew and I had just more responsibility with it, I think more so than like checking my phone when I shouldn't, it was just my mind being occupied with it. Like, I'd be sitting having dinner and I would be like, my thought would be on the business. And lately now I've been more just focusing on like, I have set hours. I'm in the office from 10 to 4:30. Sometimes I'll wake up really early and do some development or do some work, but as soon as my family's up, that's their time. I am with them. I cook breakfast for them every day. And then when I get home, we'll have dinner together. And I've really made a conscious effort to not be like thinking about work, to be checking messages, doing emails, anything like that when I'm off the clock. You're never really off the clock, but like it's become important to me to really focus on that.
Hearing you mention an office, I'm curious in terms of as things are going more remote and more hybrid, what is your setup for your company? It sounds like you have an office, and, what's kind of your opinion in terms of where that market's going of like, sometimes it can be hard to build a culture remote and virtually, do you have your employees going into the office on a daily basis, and what does that look like for you?
Actually, we have an office, but one of the startups that we worked with in 2014, they're vsilabs.com. They do autonomous vehicle research. We built their portal and maintained their website. And as a part of the deal, they gave us a room in their office. So that's where my office is. It's actually their office. And my whole team is remote and pretty much has been since day one. So I come in, but no one else really does. I mean, sometimes someone will pop in or come and work for the day, but mostly it's all remote work.
Nice. And in terms of the remote side of it, how do you think about different time zones, kind of employees working different types of schedules and things like that? How do you, in a remote first workplace, how do you think about kind of growing and scaling a team when, some people are better at working different hours than others, but having enough collaboration time and enough team culture, to kind of keep growing the business? How do you think about that at your company?
We have a few scheduled meetings a week, and that's a requirement to be on. It's obviously not in person because we're remote. So we're on the phone, Zoom, and as long as you're at those meetings and there's a certain amount of work that you have to do, as long as you get it done, I don't care if you do it at 8 a.m. or 4 p.m. or midnight, or I'm not concerned about what time of day it. Rather, I'm just kind of concerned about output. And if you're supposed to be at a meeting, be there. And that's really it.
I'm curious to kind of step back a little bit in terms of like thinking about kind of like, your journey and your experience. There's a lot of people listening to the show that are, thinking about potentially quitting their jobs or have recently quit their jobs. Is there a specific piece of advice or something that you wish you knew kind of like going through the process when you did?
I mean, unless you have like actual customers lined up, like you're starting a business because this person has a need for it, and that's enough to like sustain you. If you're just kind of like, oh, I just want to start a business, like it'd be probably a better idea to make sure you have customers. Cause like I said, it was like 2 years before I could live off the business. And even then it wasn't like that much money. It was like, I could barely skate by. That'd be my advice, is like, make sure you have a market, make sure you have someone that you can actually sell it to. And if you can have that, then you can figure out from there how to grow it and, stuff like that.
Yeah. And, something that, I did was like, as we were first growing, like I had, side jobs just to kind of like supplement the income in terms of like validation. I know you did as well. A debate that people talk about a lot of times is, how long to keep on to that, or how long to keep on to your job before you have enough validation to, quit and actually like jump off. Now, like looking back, is there anything that you would look at differently in terms of working too much of a side job and not having enough time spending out and getting customers to like go all in? Or, do you have any thoughts on that in general?
I mean, thankfully I was able to like work the restaurant job so I could work part-time. I was full-time on the business, and it was like 2 years before I made any sort of money at it. So like, it does take effort. Like if you're going to do it at all, you've got to be all in. It's more about just how you make it work while you're all in. If you're working a side job to pay your bills, that's what you have to do. But might as well not even do it at all if you're not going to like really go for it.
Talk to me a little bit about, as you are continuing to grow the company, so you're on 10 years now, talk to me a little bit about, where do you want the next 5 years, the next 10 years to look like in general? Do you have like a similar trajectory in mind of just like more projects, more people working under you, or do you have different goals as you kind of head into the next decade of your company?
No, I do think it is, like continuing to grow more projects, more people, and also maybe sort of working on our own products too, seeing if we can have success with an app of our own, or, we've got a few ideas floating around the company, and it would be nice to kind of get into something like that too. So that's maybe a slightly different direction that we might be heading in, but, still kind of aligned with what we're doing. You
talked a little bit about kind of your, kind of set schedule and kind of like setting some boundaries and kind of like working with within kind of like some timeframes that fit with your family, as, kind of time goes on with the company as well. Do you have any other goals in terms of shifting priorities of like, being able to travel more? It sounds like potentially work on some like different side projects as well. Like, do you have any other different priorities that you want to like think about, or that you would think about kind of like adjusting your schedule or anything like that towards?
Yeah, I think, I was so hands-on in the beginning, and I still am, but it would be nice to be a little bit less so that I could just spend more time with my family, investing into their lives and going places and doing fun things. Because what I think about is when I'm old, what I'll be left with is my memories, and I won't remember sending one more email or writing one more line of code, but I will remember the day we went out to the small town with my family and had some ice cream. So like, that's where my priorities are headed. Honestly, I hope that's not bad, because it's kind of against the hustle culture, but like, as I do this, like I want to be able to live life the way I want to and not have someone dictating, like, you have to spend a certain amount of time at it. Like, I still want to be successful and I'm all in, but I also want to make sure I'm giving time to my family too.
I'm pretty sure every guest that's been on the show has been anti-hustle culture. I think that's part of the the rhetoric of the people that have quit their jobs. A lot of times is people focusing on flexibility, controlling their own schedule, and like really focusing on either the projects or that they want to work on, or kind of like taking their time back. So no, it's I definitely resonate, and I think a lot of people here resonate with that similar concept. And to just kind of like going back a little bit, you made this leap in terms of you had never started a business before. You had it sounds like very limited development experience, if any. And you made this leap, and this business kind of, you've now been running it for 10 years. Just talk to me a little bit about how you could explain to people kind of like understanding like the risk tolerance and how you figured it out. And, what's just like a piece of advice people can take from that, of like how you were able to kind of make that leap. And you talk about it very nonchalantly, but it was a huge risk, right? You took 2 years without making salary. So, kind of talk to me a little bit of that mindset. What's like a takeaway you could give someone listening to this show?
Yeah, I don't know if it was easier for me at the time or not, because I was like still in college when I decided that I was going to start this business. So like I wasn't used to making a lot of money. I didn't have a cushy salary, or, a cushion salary that I like dropped down to making no money from. I was, serving tables 30 to 35 hours a week. And then when I started doing this, like obviously it just kind of replaced school. So like I was doing school full time, then I switched it to doing business full time. Lowered my hours at the restaurant as the business started doing better. So for a while I was still doing 25 hours, and then it was 20, and then it was 15, and then 10, and then I quit altogether. I guess it was a big risk, but it didn't really feel like one at the time, because I wasn't like changing my lifestyle really. It was, just instead of school, which I was paying for, now I was working on something that could generate money for myself. And even though it didn't come in right away, it did happen eventually. So that felt better. I don't know if that's exactly what you were looking for with the answer to the question, but it was my experience.
No, that's absolutely perfect. And I think I definitely agree with you. I think it will be a lot harder quitting now. Like once you have, your family, you have, a certain lifestyle that you get used to, versus like going back, I think would be like that much more difficult now than, to end it. We always ask the same thing to every guest. What are you most excited about over the next 3 to 5 years?
Even though I've been running the business for 10 years, like the previous 5 years, I'd say I've definitely learned a lot just about like how to do things, how to manage it, how to get the work in, how to manage it while it's in. And right now I'd say is kind of like the first year, I'd say it's kind of like feeling like a little bit stable where I'm not just like, what's going on? What's wrong? Like I'm kind of like, okay, I come in on Monday and it's, stuff is going on, but it's business as usual. So I'd like to kind of keep refining the processes so that it's even more just flowing. And then I can think about, like I said, spending more time with my family, but also like doing the stuff like developing our own products and seeing how well we can do with stuff like that.
Awesome to hear your story and kind of like the journey of where you got to. And I think, kind of before we jet off, if you mind just kind of giving a quick elevator pitch about your company, and if people are interested in mobile or web services, where they can find you.
Yep. So we're the Jed Mahonis Group. We specialize in iOS and Android development. We primarily work with businesses, but also some startups. And we are good at taking just an idea that you have and actually making it into a working product. Also, we sometimes take over code that was poorly written or just isn't functioning and turn it into something that's working. So that's something we do too. And we do backends in Ruby on Rails. Yeah, admin dashboards, that kind of stuff. So data management tools and mobile apps is really what we're good at.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'll include all of your links in the episode description. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm excited to see where you take it next.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show. This was fun.
Thank you for listening. It really means a lot to us. We want to hear from you as we keep growing. Please reach out on whyquit.co if you have any feedback or potential guests. A special thanks to Chris Dole for the music. Please check out his newest album, Here's to You, on Spotify. Thank you, and we will be back next week with another episode.